If you want to get around a huge city like Tokyo, you're probably high above the ground or under it. Despite the crowds, stations are orderly and clean. The carriages are packed at certain times of the day, so it's best to leave peak hours to the workers. There are lots of them. Some 40 million passengers travel every day in Tokyo. The train stops only briefly, so you've got to move it. Queuing behaviour attests to the basic good manners of Japanese people. However, like everywhere else, they surge when the door opens. It's much less crowded at non-peak hours on outer suburban trains. Listen to this announcement.
The next station is Kikuna, JH15. Please set your mobile phone to silent mode and refrain from talking on the phone.
Here in Yokohama, you can see Japanese suburbs which look like any large city's suburbs. On many stations you can find food for the journey. You can buy a complete meal in a bento box. You have multiple choices for rubbish. Japan was the first country in the world to build a separate rail network for its Shinkansen trains. In fact, they started construction in 1940 and again in 1959. Today, there are 2.7 million kilometres of rail. Like most bullet trains, the coaches are quiet and comfortable. Although you do get the feeling you're on an aeroplane. Even smokers are catered for. This guy is probably just puffed away in the special smoking room on board. Passengers eat from a bento box rather than buying food on the train. They're very good. Watching the scenery from the Shinkansen is a bit disorienting because it can travel up to 320 kilometres an hour. Slowed down footage shows us that some of the scenery is not so scenic, but you get an idea of the particular region in a short time. Japan is a very industrialised country.
We will soon make a brief stop out of the way. Passengers changing to...
So now we are back in the city, this time Kyoto. This crowd of passengers is returning from Arashiyama, a tourist location about an hour from Kyoto. Commuters use it every day. This is a typical local train. It's far less like a plane and way slower. I prefer it. Kyoto Station is usually crowded and quite stimulating for a visitor. Most signs are in English as well, so you will be well served if you can read English. All services for travellers are provided at reasonable prices. It's the same in all large stations. Kyoto is different though. It has multiple stories of shops leading further and further up. I was grateful for the escalators. I could not have climbed the steps. On the very top, you can find a green oasis, a garden for city-weary people. Amazing. A green garden on top of a railway station. With an entry like a castle gate, Kanazawa Station is a harmonious blend of old and new. Buses have the problem of heavy traffic. Then there's the tour buses, plenty of them. All I can say about tour buses is, get off. So I'm staying on the 202 and I maybe should be on the 207, which is ahead of me. So it's about 10 past 10. I'm getting tired. However, buses have a huge advantage for a person looking to appreciate the scenery at a reasonable pace. You get the sense that you can really see the landscape. It worked for me in the Japanese Alps. You also get to understand that scenic areas are not always brochure pretty. You can see elements of the infrastructure for yourself. I was trying to get to Takayama, but the train stopped at Jero, unfortunately. The line was out of action for maintenance. Japanese people are very honest and queued patiently to pay the fare. I'm waiting at a bus stop because the train couldn't go through all the way. We had to stop at Jero, get off, wait for about an hour and a half, and then catch a bus, which is due to arrive in about 30 minutes. It's really fairly frustrating, but I took advantage and had noodles next door. Buses are very comfortable. This was a typical intercity bus driving through the Japanese Alps, which I imagine being snow-capped in winter. There are so many tunnels en route that you are barely out when you're back in again for long sections. The pace of a bus allows a full appreciation of the mountains and villages. When the bus stopped in this village, you had time to go out walking at walking pace. The surrounding forest provided the building materials for these lovely old buildings. Then there are more traditional forms of transport requiring strenuous human effort. A boat on the river is propelled by poles and muscles. Legs propel other modes. There are plenty of bicycles in cities for tourists to hire and bicycle tours. Rickshaws are strictly for tourists. And there's always plain walking, probably the best way to get around.